Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. We'll have our countdown a little better next week. We're working on that, but we are going to continue to go over the cycle, continue to break down what's actually going on internally in a person who cannot stop drinking and using. You know, this plague of alcoholism and drug addiction, we're going to break that down, what that actually is, so we understand the problem, and then we are going to get to the solution so people can recover from alcoholism and drug addiction. Wow, that's what we're doing. So we'll keep after that, stay in a place of surrender each and every day so we can stay available to God to be used for things like this, so we need his help to beat down our selfishness as our ego rebuilds so that we don't think we're uniquely different. And over time, we don't get laxed and let our guard down so we can stay after this so that we know that we can stay sober so we can be useful to God. Because me, drunk or high, I'm not useful to God or anybody else. Okay? So the whole point with guys and girls like us is that we have to stay sober. If we don't stay sober, nothing else is good is going to come from our life. So we've proven that over and over and over again. So the problem is we can never stay sober. And so we build things up and crash it all down and so on and so forth. So we have to figure out, because there really was no answer, 100% answer for someone to guarantee that you stay sober, because it was a revolving door. Relapse, broken promise after broken promise, move here, move there, new relationship. Well, we're just plagued by this addiction thing, and there's really no answer. Relapse is just a part of it. No, it's not. It doesn't have to be. We could start here, moving forward, with 100% guaranteed there is no more relapse. Relapse does not have to be a part of your story, or it does not have to continue to be a part of your story. And that's what we're saying very clearly, 100% guaranteed, understanding the problem first and foremost, and then applying the solution to our life on a daily basis, staying in the 3 parts. And stop being so selfish that you can't work with somebody. And you will 100% guaranteed to stay sober. Here we go. Okay, we're going to start on There's a Solution, Chapter 2. We're going to bounce around a little bit today. Next week, we should be back on the Bill story part where we left off. We had a couple weeks off, but we're going to get back on it, okay? So turn with me to page 17 out of the big book. Chapter 2, there is a solution, okay? So we're going to understand the problem. We're going to go over that, break that down. So you have to know what the problem is and what the solution is to recover and stay recovered, okay? So let's start here, page 17, top of the page. It says this: there is a solution. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Matt was one of those people, okay? And you may be able to relate to this. It says, nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. Man, just certain lines and sentences. Did you hear that? What have they done? They have recovered. When you work these steps and take suggestions and stay in the 3 parts on a daily basis and look to God for his will to be done in your life and not your will, and be careful so you stay in accountability and you work with others, all these things we talk about, you treat the real problem is this internal condition, your spirit with God and the things of God, and beat down your selfishness. Guess what will happen? You will recover. You will not be recovering. If you're recovering, or maybe you just came in, you're still recovering, you haven't actually took suggestions, you haven't realized that you have to turn your will and your life over to the care of God and do that every 24 hours, every single day, you may still be recovering. You haven't addressed the problem, which is the spiritual malady, because we're so sick in our minds, we keep putting substance back in our body, lying to ourselves. And we don't understand why until we treat the internal condition with God and the things of God and beat down our selfishness to treat that spiritual malady so our mind doesn't completely have us doing things we don't want to do. We're able to capture thoughts. We're able to see the lies a little bit clearer. And we're working with others, getting our focus off of ourselves. Then you can recover. But people will keep saying that you'll always be recovering. First, they just don't understand. Well, they haven't worked the steps. They haven't had a spiritual experience. They're not making themselves available. They're not doing the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. They may be just coming to the fellowship or just going to church. You have to actively on a daily basis be treating your internal condition. Then you can recover. And what does it say? That they have solved the drink problem and the drug problem. The drink problem and the drug problem has been solved. There's no longer a drink or drug problem. You can recover from addiction, but there are things you need to do, steps you need to take. So we shouldn't be struggling with drugs and alcohol anymore. Right? How awesome is that? There is a solution. Okay, next paragraph. We are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations were represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship of friendliness and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. Right? The fellowship that you create when you're making yourself available and you're keeping God and your recovery and the experience now that you have with being an addict, but now experiencing the power of God and getting relieved from addiction and treating your internal spiritual malady with God and the things of God and letting your mind clear out and your body get more healthy and you're bringing your body around like-minded people. There's a sense of belonging and friendship and seeing other people recover and get out of addiction and their lives get better and all the people's lives that they were destroying, that they have hope now and they can come and have a little relief. All that stuff is indescribably awesome. Now in the day-to-day, we still deal with the flesh, we still deal with irritations, we still deal with being depressed at times, some mornings, self is all in there, fear and all this stuff. It's not like we're just a complete cakewalk, but when you're living right for God and working with others, there's an indescribable feeling that comes from that. It's so wonderful. Now, other stuff will come in and try to dangle carrots to pull you away from that as if you're missing out on something. So be careful not to fall for some of those. But in this way of living, you still do enjoy life. You enjoy it the right way, the proper way. God provides your needs. You're taking action. You're eating well. You're having good fellowship and friendliness. It really is an indescribable feeling. So next sentence says, we are like passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck. Think about that. It's like we can relate to each other because we were headed for destruction, a path of misery, and there was no way out. We were hopeless like Bill, as we just read. There was no recovering from this alcoholism and drug addiction. It really wasn't. Now, all of a sudden, we have this hope that we can recover, not be recovering, that we can recover from this worldwide plague. And all of a sudden, it's like, bro, you survived that? It's like we were in a shipwreck and we survived. We're looking at around each other like, bro, that was crazy. Like, I thought for sure we were going to die. Like, there was no way getting out of that one. You know, like there was absolutely no hope. And now we've somehow been pulled out of that certain death. And it's like, bro, can you believe this, dude? Like, we got pulled out of this, right? But watch what it says next. When camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table, right? It's running through everybody. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we survived this addiction thing. Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, check this, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go on our individual ways, right? There's more to this than that. Not the fact that we just survived this certain death thing together, but there's more involved here. Check this out. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. So the fact that we survived this crazy event together that would be like, oh, high five and joyous. And then eventually we kind of go our own ways, right? We survive this shipwreck, we come to shore, and we all go our separate ways. But there's more to it than that. Check the next paragraph. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. Once we understood the problem, it's a spiritual problem rooted in the mind, that its selfishness has had its way in our life and took us to this place where we keep going back to the substance that used to work and treat us internally, but now it doesn't even work anymore. We're beating our head against the wall. We're losing everything good in life, and we didn't think there was hope to get out of it. We're on this circle, this vicious cycle over and over again, and yet we hear the problem. We understand, oh my gosh, there is a way out. There is hope. We get saved from addiction, and it doesn't stop there. Now we need to be given back because we have a common solution. What's the solution to alcoholism and drug addiction? It's God. Jesus. It's God. Let's go over that again. We have a common solution, right? This thing that nobody can seem to figure out. That they'll risk their family, their kids, their jobs, their life, jail time, death, certain death. They don't care. They risk it all, right? Like, what is that? And then we found a solution for that. And the solution is what? They don't pull no punches. The solution is God, right? There's no punches pulled. It's laid out beautifully in the big book. Right? So it says this common solution that we found. We have a way on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism or drug addiction. So we finally understand what the problem is. The problem gets broken down to us, right? Look here we are, stuck in this cycle. Because of our selfish outlook and our selfish ways, we got this big hole right in the middle of us internally. Our spirit is sick because we're not living life the way God intended us to live. We're living the way the world tells us to live. We're born with a selfish nature, have a selfish outlook. It's all about us and selfish pleasure. So as we seek that selfish pleasure, this internal condition, our spirit gets more sick and more sick and more sick. We discover things that kind of take our focus off of how uncomfortable we are inside, how self-conscious we are. And guys like us find drugs and alcohol. They come in, they actually temporarily give us ease and comfort from the spiritual malady. So we think we found it. We found the answer. My fear went away. My self-confidence came back. And, it was fixing me for a while until it stops working as good as it did. Right? So we understand what the problem is. And until we treat the spiritual malady, which means we're going to need spiritual help, the solution is God and the power of God, because it's a spiritual malady is really what we've been struggling with and suffering from. Disconnection from our Creator. We just learn to treat that with drugs and alcohol. So the drugs and alcohol aren't really the problem. They're just what we found to help treat the real problem, which is an internal problem. Selfishness and being self-conscious and fear and not really understanding that life is not about us living for ourselves. And until we figure that out, although some are able to kind of seemingly go about their business living for themselves, we are blessed in this way. We weren't able to do that now, were we? we lost it all. We were in such a pitiful state of brokenness. We were like grown up little kids. We couldn't continue, although we did for years in different ways. But thank God for that blessing that we couldn't continue to function and live for ourselves. And we were never meant to live that way. So once we start to figure some of this stuff out, we can treat the real problem, which is disconnection from God. So the common solution that we found to recover from alcoholism and drug addiction is God and the power of God, so that we're no longer blocked off from God. Is that a clear-cut explanation? It's like, here it is. It's all here. Spend some time on it through the big book, through the Bible. Actually work the steps and live the steps out in your life. Get discipled at the church. Bear the cross in the morning. Let the Holy Spirit live through you. It's like, spend time with God in the morning, in the night, all these times on a daily approach, staying in the 3 parts so we can treat the problem, which is the spiritual malady. And it's rooted in the mind. Our minds play tricks on us, lie to us. we keep going back to this mental obsession. This great obsession is that we can control drugs and alcohol like we see others doing. And why we keep going back to that is this. Because we didn't know to treat the spiritual malady. Once the spiritual malady has a real hold, we are a baffled lot. Meaning, we can't think clearly enough when we're coming apart at the seams on the inside. Right? And then the thought comes where it's going to be different. But the 1,000 times before, it wasn't different. And we give into that good old thought of taking that first drink, first drug. That's how insane we are. Because we're not treating the internal condition. We're being bombarded with lies. So we give into the thought, we put it in our body, and what happens? Because the way our body reacts to drugs and alcohol, some people can go to a ball game and drink and cut it off. But we put the alcohol, the drug in our body, and the physical allergy sets off for more and more and more. This thing called the phenomenon of craving kicks in that some people don't have for whatever reason. Some people, like my friend over to my right, are allergic to peanuts. I'm not allergic to peanuts. I can't explain it. Both of us happen to be allergic to alcohol and drugs. And so are you. And you, and you, and you. And so I can't explain it, but we put it in our body. The phenomenon of craving kicks in. What happens after that? We go on a spree. Look. And the only thing that stops that spree is what? Truth or consequence. What's your truth or consequence? Becoming homeless. Not being welcome at home. Parents won't let me be back. I have to go to jail. I messed up. I got a warrant. I got high in treatment. They had to kick me out. I go to the ER. On and on and on. Right? So after the spree, the truth and consequence hits, and then what happens? If you're blessed enough, like most of us have been, we emerge remorseful. Right? Once again, we get another chance by the grace of God. And we make firm resolution around that, saying, making all these promises. Okay, I'm done. I won't go back to that crowd. I won't do this. I won't do that. Oh, that job. I can't have that job because so-and-so's there. And all these excuses we have. And we make all these promises. And what? They always turn to broken promises. Why? Because we don't know the problem. We don't understand that we have a death sentence when it comes to alcoholism and drug addiction. And if we don't treat the real internal problem with God and the things of God and take suggestions and don't think we're uniquely different. We're not uniquely, especially after you have some time under your belt. You get the ego rebuilds. And I don't have to do that. That's a little too intense. I can let up here. I can let up there. And you let up out of those 3 parts on your daily approach. And before you know it, this insanity starts to sound really good. That I can put something in my body and control it. Because at the same time, the malady's kicking your butt, right? So turn with me over to page, let's see, page 58 on chapter 5, how it works. We're going to jump around a couple paragraphs. All the information's here. Everything you would need to know to never, ever, ever get back on this cycle, to never, never, ever relapse. And yet, we discuss and we discuss and we discuss. So many are suffering out there. Family members are affected. Kids are affected. Parents are affected. Everybody's affected because of alcoholism and drug addiction. And I'm like, why? Why? I was a nightmare for 20 years, 19 years to be exact. And I caused so much problems in my addiction and hurt so many people. And there's really no need for it because we have a fail-proof plan to recover. So here we go. How it works, chapter 5 out of the big book, page 58. Okay? Check this out. Top of the page, it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. I've been to AA. I've tried AA. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Oh, really? Did you actually read the book? Did you follow thoroughly the path laid out in the book? Did you go through all the steps? Did you have a sponsor? Did you take somebody else through the steps? Did you stay loyal to the meetings? Did you really do it? No, I didn't. Then how can you say it doesn't work? Right? Because if you thoroughly follow the path laid out, a lot of people never even pick up the book. Just like church, people don't read the Bible. You think I'm kidding. I'm not. Just like church, a lot of people don't read the Bible. That's why they're able to believe this and believe that, because they don't read the Bible for themselves. That's why they're able to latch onto a false teaching and get pulled this way. Because if you read the Bible for yourself, you'd say, wait a minute, what that guy's saying is not according to the Bible. That's why you need to read it for yourself. Same thing in AA circles. A lot of people don't read the big book. And the big book is very clear. And then they say, I tried AA and it didn't work. Really? You can say that about church. I tried church and it didn't work. Yeah, but were you really connected? Did you start getting in the Word? Did you really seek God every single day? Did you stay in accountability? Did you eventually start working with others? Because if you did, God will come. To those who seek, to those who follow the path and suggestions and take steps of action, it's a spiritual program of action, you will find God, or God will find you, however you want to put it. Okay, so it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. We're just going to finish on this one line. We're going to break down every syllable of every word. I'm just kidding. Thoroughly, like Sam wants to do it. He's like, that sounds interesting. Thoroughly. He's like, wow. Can we start with TH and then go? Thoroughly. See, Jeff will tell you what thoroughly means. That's like people don't know. Dude, don't say you've tried it when you really haven't. If you haven't tried it, then don't say you did and it doesn't work. Because have you thoroughly followed the path laid out in this book? Do you know what thoroughly means? Yeah, I know you do. But have you thoroughly followed the path? Because if you thoroughly follow the path, you will have a spiritual experience and you will recover from alcoholism and drug addiction. Part of the path is you continuing in this and making yourself available. Watch out for your ego rebuilding to think you're uniquely different and you don't have to do the things that others have to do. The things you did at first is how you got to where you were. And then you let off over time, and then you relapse and you wonder why. Because you didn't thoroughly follow the path. Because thoroughly following the path is continuing to follow the path. It's 100% guaranteed. But have you thoroughly followed the path? It says, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Okay? Word for word. The big book is practical and plain in language, and it's just coming right at you. That's probably why people don't like the big book. You say you tried it and it didn't work, but you didn't thoroughly follow the path, now did you? And it says, the only ones that don't recover from this thing are the ones that what? That will not completely give themselves to this simple program. So this isn't, you can just halfway do it. Or you can stay in one of the parts and just go to meetings. No, you have to or you can just stop at step 3, right? And then maybe you did the steps, but you don't have to really work with others. You don't have the time. And well, what would I say and how would I do it, right? You got to sort through all that and completely give yourself, and then it will work. It says this, or the ones who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. Dude, that is so important. Do you know how delusional we are because of selfishness and how much pride actually blinds a person? Right here, hello, I raise my hand because it's me and it happens to me. And I can get so wrapped up in myself and my outlook and my offense and my fear and my wanting this and wanting that as my ego rebuilds over time. And I can be delusional in my thought process. And then my outlook is all jacked up. And then I'm unwilling to be honest with myself and my part. And yeah, man, Lord, help me understand and see that I've been thinking wrong. And now my perspective's off. And now I'm in danger of taking action now based on lies and everything that's going on. And the malady manifesting itself in what? Restlessness, irritableness, discontentment. I'm hungry. Like it says in was it Matthew 4:4? Jesus being tempted by the devil. He was hungry when he was being tempted. So he's susceptible, right? I'm restless, irritable, discontented. I'm in my head focused on self too much, on what I don't have. And I'm starting to be discontented and complaining. So I'm a little extra more irritable, right? So I'm feeling restless. I'm just uneasy, right? I'm taking back control of my life in areas. My focus is off. I'm looking at the negatives instead of the positives. I got to pull away from that and get back focused, right? Now, but if I'm unable to be honest with myself and I sit in this malady and I let the lies bombard and I start agreeing with the lies, I'm in a bad spot, dude. I'm around the corner from being drunk and high is what I'm at. Guys like us. Other people may go cheat on their wife or go back to watching porn or whatever you do. And guys like us may do all of the above. E, A, B, C, D, E, all of the above. Yeah, you're an E guy maybe, but for sure we're going to go get drunk and high. Right? Because we're inconstitutionally capable of being honest with ourselves. We have to be very, very, very careful. It says this. There are such unfortunates, they are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. He's just like being humble about it. Giving someone like, I guess at this point, if you can't be honest with yourself, all the years on here, maybe you were born that way. I guess that's what he's saying. So please don't be that person. Okay. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Because this spiritual life of living, it demands rigorous honesty. Now, we may fall into deceit and deception, and we need to catch it before it's too late and repent from that and confess it, because it demands rigorous honesty. So you got to live the steps out. Step 10 is soon as you realize you've done something wrong, soon as you realize you've said something you shouldn't have said or you've offended somebody, you need to be honest with yourself about it, see your part, and quickly go to that person. Right? To stay on the spiritual path, it takes rigorous honesty, and a willingness to admit when we're wrong, right? Oh man, I was focused on the wrong thing. The attack was pretty hard. I was scenario building. I was thinking about myself more than others, and I got there. So I apologize. Lord, thank you for your grace to pull me out of it and people in my life to help me see and pull out of it. And I got to be honest and confess, because I don't want to face these consequences. Dude, your consequences are coming, and you don't have to face them like that. So, okay, back to the reading. Last little part of this paragraph on page 58. It says, their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Wow, so awesome. Okay, turn me to page 60. I love this this description. Halfway down page 60, the A, B, and the C, they read it a lot of times before the meetings. This is understanding the problem. You need to understand this, and that without understanding the problem, you can't realize that there's no escape. That's where the hopelessness comes. There's only one way out. There's one way out. And step one has to be ingrained in us and understood and believed. You got to be willing to be honest with yourself about step one, that you are completely powerless. You live in a life on self-will is going to amount to nothing. You're completely powerless. I know that's hard to admit and to say and to keep saying, but it's so important, because if we don't continue to believe step one, that we are powerless, our life is unmanageable, and this is the only way that we're able to have a life that we can live and enjoy. Watch it. Page 60. We'll start with A. We're going to do the A, B's, and the C's. Are you ready? Here's A. This is how I like to qualify people who are a good fit for the Dream Center, and people that you want to work with, are ready to go through the steps. They have to come to this place and be honest with themselves and realize, because once you realize this, guess what? You're going to die. It may light a fire up under you to do what needs to be done. And don't think that, that's unimportant. No, I'm uniquely different. I don't need that. Without all this, you're going to die. Okay? Here we go. It's true. It just sounds funny. You're going to die. But it's true. Right? It may sound funny, but dude, it's true. I got people I know personally that I never thought would be dead right now. But they thought they were uniquely different. They didn't stay. They were in the three parts, seeking God, working with others for a good stretch of time. But they let their guard down because they thought they were uniquely different, that they didn't have to continue in it. They didn't thoroughly follow the layout, which says you must continue in it or you'll lose it. Then they lost it, they relapsed, and they're found dead. People had to walk in on them because they weren't showing up to work and whatnot. They had to kick the door down and find them dead. One guy was found in his car. He was there for 4 days in his car because he thought it was uniquely different. And you think that can't happen to you. I never thought it would happen to them. They were some of the strongest, on fire people I've ever seen. And now they're dead. So that's why. So, hey, here we go. Page 60. They were alcoholic and could not manage their own lives. Okay, here's what you have to be honest with yourself about. Is this you? So I qualify people to come into the men's home, or if they want me to take them to the steps, I have to qualify them to make sure that they are that true alcoholic addict that will not stop without God's power, that will not stop without making themselves available and doing the things of God on a daily basis. Staying in those 3 parts. I have to see, is this you? Are you alcoholic addict who could not manage your own life? That was me. What makes our life so unmanageable, guys? Is it because we stop being able to hold a job and we lose our girl? What makes our life so unmanageable? Are you ready for this? So a lot of people don't know. That. The spiritual malady, the disconnection from God, living for yourself, bringing misery, trying to treat it with drugs and alcohol and porn and different things. That's why you can't stay sober. That left untreated, you will always go back. That's why. Why is my life unmanageable? If I get away from the drugs and alcohol, I still can't manage. I can't even get out of bed sometimes. So the drugs and alcohol weren't really the problem. They weren't why my life was unmanageable. They added a bunch of chaos and I made a fool out of myself. I stole and cheat to get high and all those things. But my life's unmanageable only because of the spiritual malady. Because I'm selfish and I live for myself. I don't seek God every day. I don't make myself available for God and His purposes. Do you understand? Like, people will not know this. They'll say, man, why are you such I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I can't hold a job, I burn bridges, I ruin relationships. And they're like, why is your life so unmanageable? Just because, I have this drinking and drug problem and it's like, but no, you remove the drugs and alcohol and your life don't get better. This is why your life's unmanageable. Okay? B, here we go. That probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. So here's the B. So once you understand your life's unmanageable and why it's unmanageable, now we come to this place and say, well, no human power is going to relieve me of my situation. What does that mean? That I'm going to have to come to this place, either die, continue on living in that futile, worthless, miserable existence until I physically die, or die even sooner. I have that option, or I have to consider that just maybe the power of God could relieve me from this alcoholism and drug addiction. That the common solution that we found is God and the power of God. Wait a minute, I don't want to talk about God. I had bad experiences. But it's either you die or you have this much willingness and open-mindedness that just possibly there's a God out there that has power and loves you and will help you recover. And I'm telling you that, and many other people, that's what happened to them. So are we understanding where we are? Are we understanding the problem that, dude, our life's unmanageable because of the spiritual condition that we have and our mind's sick, telling us to go back to things that don't even work, and our life's a mess and all these consequences. And we understand that our life's unmanageable, and I admit it, and that probably no human power. What does that mean? Does that mean your girl, your husband, your wife, your pastor, your mentor, the group, the fellowship group? No, a psychologist? No human power. That means you got to consider God. And C, here it is. This book's not pulling no punches. That God could and would if He were sought. So, what is it saying? This common solution that we found, the common solution is God. And God will relieve you from your alcoholism and drug addiction through His power if you thoroughly follow and seek him every day and stay in the 3 parts, he will do it. So where's the confusion around what AA's message is? AA's message is and always has been that only God will allow you to recover from alcoholism and drug addiction. Now, how cool is that? And now, so we understand step 1, the problem. It's nothing that we're going to be able to tackle on our own, right? We're being honest about that. We understand that maybe if we're this much open-mindedness that just quite possibly God could quickly move past step 2. Now we're at step 3, right? And this is where the daily approach and the process comes from step 3. I'm going to end here. I'll read it. Being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do, right? So we're at this place now that we understand the seriousness of our situation, that we are going to die. Like, there's no hope of getting out of this, okay? Our life's unmanageable because our spirit is sick and our mind's sick and our body's in. And it's like, we're going to have to consider then that if only there's no human power that could relieve us from this, only God's power is going to relieve us. Well, we have to consider God then. So what does that mean? Well, I don't know how to turn my life and will over to God, but I know that I'm either going to die or I'm going to figure this out, and I have to stay after it on a daily basis and take suggestions from people, follow the book, follow the Bible, look to God every day, and that he will relieve me from this. It says the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. You know what I mean? On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody. Even though our motives are good, most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, right? Trying to arrange the lights and the ballet, and you do this and you do that. Each person is trying to be the director, trying to play God. And I got to be convinced that I can't go back to living that way. Even though I have some clean time and I feel better and my eyes have been open, I can't over time think I'm uniquely different, and I don't have to follow this thoroughly, stay in the 3 parts. I can go back to working and go back to my life, because over time I may be right back. I'm living on self-will again. It's so easy to happen, and that's the warning. And on page 62, 71, 76, and 87, it all gives these examples of that, how selfishness is the problem. It says on 62, above all else, above everything, I must get rid of this selfishness. And only God makes that possible. Okay, on page 71, and we're going to end on these little parts of selfishness, because you got to know what the problem is. Selfishness and going back to living in self-will. Oh my gosh, on page 71 it says this. We hope, at the top, we hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. That's above all else. We need God's help to remove our selfishness away from us. This self-will that's blocked us off from God. Page 76. We have 2 more little lines and we're done. Page 76. What does it say? It says halfway down, page 76, a little more towards the bottom. It says, now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated. How? Out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. We're just talking about the actor trying to run the show. So we keep having to clean up all this wreckage from us going back to living in self-will, trying to run the show ourselves. We've all done it countless times. And we just cause havoc. Are we going to come to this place where we no longer are going to step out on self-will? And in 87, we'll end here. All these examples of what the problem is, which is self, and how we need God's help on a daily basis. Because ego will rebuild, my friends. Page 87, it says this, halfway down, we especially ask freedom from self-will. We especially ask God for freedom from self-will. Now let's end with a verse. Here's the verse of the day, and which backs up the daily approach. I love this verse. We're going to have Ivan read it. Leviticus 6, 19 and 20.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "On the day Aaron and his sons are anointed, they must present to the Lord the standard grain offering of 2 quarts of choice flour, half to be offered in the morning and half to be offered in the evening."
And it goes on to say that it should be mixed with the olive oil. The olive oil of God is God's Spirit. When we ask God's Spirit to help us feed on His Word, that fine grain is the Word of God, God's truth. And half in the morning and half in the evening, because that's our spiritual life source. Without our spiritual life, we can't properly treat the spiritual condition to keep our perspective on God and the things of God. We need it every single day. In the morning, have a little bit at lunch, and of course in the evening. Okay? So we'll end there. Apply the stuff you're learning. I'll see you next week. All right? God bless.